Few teams in the NBA have been tanking for what feels like longer than the Orlando Magic. They are the kings of the East. Ever since Dwight Howard left in 2012, yeah, they've strung together a couple decent seasons. They managed to sneak into the playoffs once. But overall, this team has really been in a rebuild for a decade now. But it may finally be coming to an end. After a lot of promising signs last season, the Magic lucked into the number one overall pick in Paolo Banchero. He looks like the clear-cut correct choice for that number one pick, and the Magic might be on pace to surprise a lot of people in this upcoming season and sneak into the play-in tournament as the 10th seed. So let's talk about why the Orlando Magic could actually be a pretty decent NBA team in the 2023 season. Looking at the Magic's roster, there are two things which give me a whole lot of hope for this team to play well next season outside of Paolo Banchero, and the first one is health. This team had a lot of weird injuries last season. Jalen Suggs was hurt for a little bit, Cole Anthony wasn't fully healthy, Wendell Carter Jr. wasn't fully healthy, Terrence Ross wasn't fully healthy. Jonathan Isaac has missed the last 2 seasons with an ACL injury, and he is finally going to be returning. This team had a lot of weird injuries last year, ones that didn't keep players out for the whole year, but kept them out for significant portions of it, and when you've got a bunch of young players who are already struggling to find their groove, to find some consistency, that's really going to screw up your roster. And hopefully, the team will actually be healthy this year. The other big factor for them is age. This team is incredibly young. The only player in their main rotation over the age of 27 is Terrence Ross, and Gary Harris, who is 27, is the only other guy who is over the age of 25. These players are very young, and they have a whole lot of time to improve, and we saw a ton of good flashes from them last season. Cole Anthony led the team in scoring with 16 points a game, and yeah, he was really inefficient, but he managed to string together some good games where you saw flashes of a guy who could be a really solid 20-point, 7-assist dude on a decent team. Markelle Fultz continues to show little flashes. Who knows if he's ever going to become anything close to the dude he was supposed to be, but he could still be a quality guard on a decent team. He's got length enough to be a solid defensive guard. He's really good at finishing at the rim. He's got a decent playmaking IQ. Yeah, he's not going to be much of a shooter, but he could contribute in other ways. Wendell Carter Jr. looked really good last season. He was very efficient, great on the boards for this team, very good for them defensively. Mo Bamba has become arguably the second best shooting big man in the NBA after shooting 38% from 3 last season on 4 attempts a game, which is just insane for a 7-footer. And assuming that's not a fluke, he will continue to be a very important floor spacer for this team, and his shooting allows them to run these funky 2 or even 3 big man lineups with him at the power forward because of how he spaces the floor. And if you're wondering who that third big man is, it would be Jonathan Isaac. I am a big fan of Jonathan Isaac. In my opinion, and this is going to make some people mad, but Jonathan Isaac defensively is what people like to pretend Anthony Davis is, an incredible rim protector who also happens to be really versatile. This dude was in the Defensive Player of the Year race in 2020 when he was last healthy, and even though the ACL tear he suffered was a major injury, he's gotten 2 years now to fully recover from it, so I am pretty confident Jonathan is going to come back and look just as good as he was before. I don't expect someone who waited this long to heal from an injury to have any lingering problems, so he's going to immediately be a massive boost to this team's roster, and he's going to allow them a lot of versatility in the kinds of lineups they can run. I really hope their coach is creative, because you can run a lot of funky lineups with this team. Like I said, Jonathan Isaac, despite being 6'11", is versatile enough to be played at the small forward position. You could run some crazy big man lineups with Franz Wagner at the 2 or the 1, because he's got some decent playmaking chops, or, if you want to be classic, you can run Wendell Carter Jr. at the 5 and have him as the only true big man out there. You can do a lot of different things with this team. Moving on from their centers, you've got Jalen Suggs on this team as well, who had a straight-up terrible rookie season. Like, the dude was an absolute shot-chucking brick. It was bad. But young guards do tend to really struggle in their first year in the NBA. This is not unusual. We have seen a whole lot of other talented young guards come in, really struggle in their first year, and then in year 2 or year 3 really get it together and show why they were drafted as high as they were. Gary Harris continues to be an extremely important role player for this team as their best three-point shooter, 38% on 5 attempts a game. Terrence Ross is an important veteran. Chuma Okeke is someone who a lot of people are high on. They think he's got good potential. I'll be straight with you, I don't really know anything about him, but it's another young guy. He's only 23. He's got nowhere to go but up. RJ Hampton is only 20 years old. He was alright for the team off the bench last season. He's another guy who could potentially make some improvements. And then you've got the Wagner brothers. And yes, I said brothers. Moritz Wagner is certainly not as exciting as his brother Franz, but he is a decent enough player for this team off the bench as well. He could become pretty decent, who knows? Franz Wagner was probably the steal of the draft, though. This guy, I mean, he's been absolutely incredible. He could legitimately be contending for an all-star selection next season. I'm that high on Franz Wagner. He was the team's best and most consistent player last year, giving them 15, 5, and 3 on 47, 35, 86 shooting splits. This guy has a very high basketball IQ. He's big. He's not a great defender by any means, but if he continues to improve his athleticism, he certainly has the IQ to continue to improve on that end. He's a pretty versatile scorer. The three-point shot needs to come along a bit more, but he's got nice touch. He's great at getting to the rim and finishing. He's just a really fun player to watch. Another guy who I really enjoy, and I think would be getting significantly more hype if he played for any team other than Orlando. So, very excited to see the leap that Franz Wagner makes in year 2. Finally, there's Paolo Banchero. Now, I don't follow college basketball much at all, but from everything I've seen both pre-draft and in the Summer League, Banchero looks like the clear-cut #1 pick for a reason. The Magic absolutely chose the correct guy. As of what we can see right now, he looks NBA ready. He could be very good defensively. He could be an okay playmaker. He could be really good at getting to the rim and finishing there. Like, this guy looks like he was the clear-cut, perfect selection for this team. They are going to be so big and versatile. I'm really excited to see what this team could do defensively. They could be one of the best defensive teams in the entire NBA while having quite a decent amount of rim finishing and playmaking on the offensive end. But there is one concern for me with the Magic, and that is their shooting. You see, I currently have Orlando sneaking into the play-in tournament as the 10th seed next season, and honestly, if they were to sneak up into the 9th or even the 8th seed, I would not be shocked. But the reason I cannot put them as a legitimate playoff team is #1, because the East is really tough right now, and #2, because they seriously lack three-point shooting on this roster. Gary Harris and Mo Bamba are the only significantly above average shooters on the entire team, and as good as they both are, neither of them are super high volume three-point shooters either. So this team is going to have a serious spacing problem for the next several seasons. Now, I think that the amount of talent they have around them, they have a lot of depth, they have a lot of young guys who become really good, that could eventually nullify it, but if we're just looking 1 year in the future, we're just looking at next season, I don't think their offense is going to be able to be good enough to get them legitimately into the playoffs with this massive lack of shooting. Now, maybe they make some trades during the season, they get some good three-point shooting role players, get rid of a few of their young guys, because while I love the depth they had, you also just don't need like 10 guys on the roster who are under the age of 25. Eventually, some of those dudes are going to need to get paid more than you can actually afford, so they're going to have to go anyway. Keep the correct guys, get some three-point shooting role players. I think that would be huge for this team, but nevertheless, I think the Magic are going to make it to the play-in tournament next season. I think they're going to surprise a whole lot of people who haven't been looking at this team closely or taking them seriously for a very long time. And I'm pretty excited to watch them play, which is something I have not been able to say since I became an NBA fan. They have a lot of exciting young players on this team, and I think Orlando is ready to finally stop the rebuild and turn this core into a legitimate contending team a few years down the line.